Maria Santos sat quietly in the corner of the bustling military hospital cafeteria, her weathered hands wrapped around a cup of lukewarm coffee. The elderly woman's presence seemed invisible to the dozens of soldiers, doctors, and nurses rushing past her table. At 78 years old, Maria had become accustomed to being overlooked, but today felt particularly heavy. She had arrived at Fort Braxton early that morning, dressed in her best navy blue dress and wearing the small silver pin her late husband had given her decades ago. The pin was simple, nothing flashy, but it held memories that most people would never understand. Maria had been trying to speak with someone in the administration office for 3 hours, but every person she approached seemed too busy or too important to listen to an old woman's request. "Ma'am, you'll need to wait over there," the young corporal at the reception desk had told her for the third time, barely glancing up from his computer screen. Maria nodded politely and returned to her corner table, watching as younger visitors were quickly attended to while she remained forgotten. The cafeteria buzzed with conversations about missions, deployments, and military operations. Maria listened quietly, understanding more than anyone realized. She had heard these same types of conversations 50 years ago, though the locations and conflicts had different names back then. The language of service never really changed. Only the faces grew younger while hers grew older. A group of young lieutenants sat at a nearby table, their voices carrying as they discussed their upcoming assignments. One mentioned the challenges of working in hostile territories. Another spoke about the importance of intelligence gathering. Maria's eyes flickered with recognition at their words, memories stirring of similar conversations from her own past. "Excuse me." Maria had approached their table earlier, hoping someone might listen to her story. "I was wondering if you could help me find the right person to speak with about a mission from 1973. The lieutenants had looked at her with polite but dismissive smiles. "Ma'am, you might want to try the Visitor Information Center," one had suggested gently, clearly assuming she was lost or confused. They returned to their conversation about modern warfare tactics, unaware that the elderly woman standing before them had once played a crucial role in operations they could only dream about. Maria understood their reaction. She looked like any other grandmother who might be visiting a relative or seeking help with paperwork. Her appearance gave no indication of her extraordinary past. The small pin on her dress was the only visible clue, but its significance was known to very few people in the modern military. She had tried explaining her purpose to several staff members throughout the morning. Each time, she was met with kind but hurried responses that directed her elsewhere. The young soldiers and administrative staff saw only an elderly civilian who probably needed help finding the commissary or the medical clinic. None of them recognized the quiet strength in her eyes or understood why she carried herself with such quiet dignity. As the morning turned to afternoon, Maria remained patient. She had learned long ago that some things were worth waiting for, and today's mission was more important than her own comfort. The document in her small purse contained information that could finally bring closure to a chapter of military history that had remained classified for decades. The hospital cafeteria continued its steady rhythm of activity around her. Doctors in white coats discussed patient cases, nurses grabbed quick lunches between shifts, and various military personnel conducted informal meetings over coffee and sandwiches. Maria observed it all, noting how the environment felt both familiar and foreign to her. She remembered similar scenes from her own service days, though women's roles had been very different then. The conversations happening around her now would have been impossible for her to join openly in 1973. Times had changed dramatically, but some things remained constant. The dedication of service members, the weight of important missions, and the bonds formed through shared purpose were timeless elements of military life. A young nurse noticed Maria sitting alone and approached with genuine concern. "Are you all right, honey? You've been here quite a while. Are you waiting for someone?" Maria smiled warmly at the kind gesture. "I'm trying to speak with someone about an old military operation. It's rather important, but I'm having trouble finding the right person." The nurse's expression showed sympathy mixed with practical concern. "Have you tried the main administrative office? They usually handle historical inquiries and veteran services." "Yes, dear. I've spoken with several people there. They keep sending me to different offices." Maria's voice remained calm, despite her growing frustration. "I have some information about a classified mission that I believe should be shared with the current command structure." The nurse hesitated, clearly wanting to help but uncertain about the proper channels for such matters. "Maybe you could try speaking with one of the senior officers? Though they're usually quite busy with current operations." Maria thanked the nurse for her kindness and watched as she hurried away to attend to her duties. The interaction reminded her of her own younger self, always trying to help others while managing overwhelming responsibilities. She had once been that busy person rushing between important tasks, though her role had been hidden from public view. The afternoon sun streamed through the cafeteria windows, casting long shadows across the tables. Maria checked her watch and realized she had been waiting for nearly 5 hours. Her feet ached from the morning's walking between different offices, but her resolve remained strong. She had waited 50 years to tell this story properly. A few more hours wouldn't matter. As she sat in the increasingly quiet cafeteria, Maria reflected on the events that had brought her here. The phone call 3 weeks ago had changed everything. A researcher working on declassified documents had discovered her name in connection with Operation Silent Eagle, a mission that had never been publicly acknowledged. The researcher's questions had awakened memories Maria thought she had buried forever. The mission in 1973 had been her last official assignment, though even then, her role had been unofficial. Women weren't supposed to be involved in such operations, but sometimes the mission requirements made gender restrictions irrelevant. Maria had possessed skills and knowledge that made her invaluable, regardless of military protocols. She pulled the envelope from her purse and looked at it once more. Inside were documents, photographs, and testimonials that could finally give proper recognition to a team of soldiers who had never received credit for their sacrifice. The mission had been successful, but its classified nature meant the participants had been sworn to secrecy. Many of them had taken that secret to their graves. Maria was one of the few survivors who could verify the details of Operation Silent Eagle. Her memory remained sharp despite her age, and she had kept careful records of everything she could legally preserve. The time had finally come to speak the truth about what had happened in that remote jungle location 50 years ago. The cafeteria staff began preparing for the dinner shift change, and Maria realized her day of waiting was far from over. She had hoped someone would recognize the significance of her information and arrange a proper meeting with senior command. Instead, she had spent the day being politely shuffled from one busy office to another. As she prepared to gather her belongings and try once more to find someone who would listen, Maria heard the sound of approaching footsteps. Heavy, purposeful steps that carried the unmistakable rhythm of senior military bearing. She looked up to see a tall figure in dress uniform walking directly toward her table, and something in his approach made her heart skip slightly. General Robert Mitchell had been reviewing classified documents in his office when his aide mentioned an elderly woman who had been waiting in the hospital all day, claiming to have information about an old operation. Most such claims turned out to be family members seeking information about deceased relatives or confused individuals with fragmented memories. However, something about this particular case had caught his attention. The aide had mentioned that the woman specifically referenced Operation Silent Eagle and claimed to have documentation. General Mitchell's blood had run cold at those words. Operation Silent Eagle was buried so deep in classified files that fewer than a dozen people alive today should even know that name existed. He immediately left his office to investigate personally. As he walked through the hospital corridors toward the cafeteria, General Mitchell's mind raced through the possibilities. Operation Silent Eagle had been a joint CIA military operation in 1973, conducted in Southeast Asia during the final phases of American involvement in the region. The mission had been successful but extraordinarily sensitive, involving the extraction of crucial intelligence that had saved countless lives. Everyone connected to the operation had been sworn to absolute secrecy. The general had studied the mission extensively during his intelligence training early in his career. It had been used as a case study in unconventional operations, though even then, many details remained classified above his clearance level. He knew that the operation had succeeded due to the involvement of an unusual team that included individuals who technically shouldn't have been there according to standard protocols. When General Mitchell entered the cafeteria and saw Maria Santos sitting alone at her corner table, he immediately noticed the small silver pin on her dress. His breath caught in his throat. The pin was a specialized commendation that had been created for Operation Silent Eagle participants, so classified that it had no official designation. Only 7 people had ever received that pin. And according to military records, all of them were deceased. Maria looked up as the general approached, and she immediately recognized his rank from the stars on his uniform. She had learned to read military insignia decades ago, a skill that had served her well during her covert years. Something in his purposeful approach told her this encounter would be different from all her previous attempts to speak with someone in authority. "Ma'am, I'm General Mitchell," he said, stopping a respectful distance from her table. His voice carried the weight of command but also genuine curiosity. "I understand you've been trying to speak with someone about Operation Silent Eagle." Maria's eyes widened slightly at hearing those words spoken aloud by someone in uniform. For 50 years, that operation name had been forbidden territory, never to be discussed outside of the most secure environments. Hearing it spoken openly felt both relieving and terrifying. "Yes, General," she replied, her voice steady despite the emotions stirring within her. "I have information about that mission that I believe should be preserved in the official record. Some of the participants have never been properly recognized for their service." General Mitchell noticed how she spoke about the mission with intimate knowledge rather than second-hand information. Her use of specific terminology and her comfortable demeanor when discussing classified operations told him this was no ordinary civilian with family stories to share. "Ma'am, may I ask your connection to Operation Silent Eagle?" The general remained standing, unsure whether this conversation should continue in such a public setting. Even though the cafeteria was nearly empty, some topics required absolute privacy. Maria reached into her purse and carefully withdrew a small leather folder. She opened it to reveal an identification card that General Mitchell instantly recognized as authentic, despite its age. The card identified Maria Santos as a civilian contractor with cryptographic authorization for Southeast Asian operations, valid from 1971 to 1974. "I was the communications specialist for the operation," Maria said quietly. "I handled all encrypted transmissions between the field team and command. I also provided linguistic support for local interactions." General Mitchell felt his understanding of military history shift dramatically. According to every file he had access to, Operation Silent Eagle had been conducted entirely by male personnel. The presence of a female communications specialist had never been mentioned in any documentation he had seen. Yet the identification card in front of him was undeniably genuine, and her knowledge of operational details was too specific to be fabricated. "Ma'am, would you be willing to discuss this matter in a more secure environment?" he asked, his tone now carrying the respect due to a fellow service member. "What you're describing represents a significant gap in our historical records." Maria nodded, gathering her belongings with practiced efficiency. As she stood, General Mitchell noticed how she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to handling sensitive situations. Her movements were deliberate and careful, showing the kind of situational awareness that was drilled into intelligence personnel. They walked together toward the hospital's administrative wing, and General Mitchell found himself adjusting his pace to match hers. Despite her age, Maria moved with purpose and dignity. She seemed comfortable walking alongside a 4-star general, suggesting this wasn't her first experience with high-level military personnel. "General, may I ask how you came to know about Operation Silent Eagle?" Maria inquired as they walked. "It's been classified far above most people's access level for decades. I studied it during my intelligence training years ago," he replied. "It was presented as an example of successful, unconventional operations, though many details were redacted even in those briefings. Your role was never mentioned in any materials I had access to." Maria smiled slightly at this information. "That was intentional. My participation was considered too sensitive to include in official records. Women weren't supposed to be involved in such operations. But sometimes practical necessities overruled policy restrictions. They reached a secure conference room, and General Mitchell held the door open for Maria. As she entered, he noticed how she automatically scanned the room, checking for potential security concerns. Her behavior suggested someone trained in operational security protocols, further confirming her claims about her military background. The conference room was equipped with soundproofing and electronic surveillance countermeasures. General Mitchell activated the privacy protocols before taking a seat across from Maria. The weight of the moment felt significant to both of them. 50 years of buried history was about to surface in an official military setting. Mrs. Santos, before we proceed, I need to verify some details about Operation Silent Eagle and Deventus time. My word for Ward 43, General Mitchell began formally. Can you tell me the operational code name for the primary extraction point? Maria didn't hesitate. Firebase Echo 7, though it was referred to as the Garden in all radio communications. The extraction helicopter was designated Gardener 1. The general's expression showed growing amazement. Those details were classified at the highest levels and had never been included in any training materials. Only someone who had actually participated in the operation would know such specific communication protocols. The team leader for the ground operations? He continued his verification. Captain James Morrison, call sign Shepard, Maria replied immediately. He was killed during the extraction phase when the landing zone came under fire. Sergeant David Chen took command and completed the mission successfully. General Mitchell leaned back in his chair, processing the implications of what he was hearing. Captain Morrison's death during Operation Silent Eagle was documented in classified files. But Sergeant Chen's role in completing the mission had been redacted from every version he had seen. Maria's knowledge was proving to be more detailed than the official military records. Mrs. Santos, what specific information are you hoping to share with us today? He asked, his tone now reflecting complete acceptance of her credentials. Maria opened her purse and withdrew the envelope she had been carrying all day. From it, she removed several documents, photographs, and what appeared to be a personal journal wrapped in protective plastic. General, I have documented proof that Operation Silent Eagle was successful because of the actions of several individuals who never received proper recognition. The official records were sanitized to remove certain politically sensitive details. But the real heroes of that mission deserve to be remembered accurately. She spread the materials across the conference table, and General Mitchell immediately recognized their significance. The documents were original communication logs. The photographs showed operational sites that matched classified intelligence maps, and the journal contained day-by-day accounts written in a feminine handwriting that was clearly contemporary to the mission period. Most importantly, Maria continued, I have proof that the intelligence we extracted during Operation Silent Eagle led directly to the successful rescue of 43 American prisoners of war 6 months later. That connection was never officially acknowledged because it would have revealed our operational methods. General Mitchell studied the materials with growing astonishment. If Maria's documentation was accurate, Operation Silent Eagle had been far more significant than any existing records indicated. The mission hadn't just been successful. It had been a crucial turning point that saved dozens of American lives through follow-up operations. General Mitchell spent the next 2 hours carefully examining every piece of documentation Maria had brought. Each item provided another piece of a puzzle that had been deliberately scattered across different classified files for 5 decades. The communications logs showed operational details that matched perfectly with his limited knowledge of the mission, while the photographs provided visual confirmation of sites that appeared in satellite imagery from 1973. The most remarkable discovery was Maria's personal journal, which contained detailed accounts of her work as the mission's communications specialist. Her entries described the complex process of maintaining secure contact with multiple teams operating in hostile territory, often under extreme pressure. The technical details she recorded demonstrated sophisticated knowledge of military cryptography and field communications that was far ahead of its time. "Mrs. Santos," General Mitchell said, looking up from the journal. "These entries describe communication protocols that weren't officially adopted by the military until the 1980 seconds. How did you develop these techniques?" Maria smiled at the question, her eyes reflecting memories of long nights spent solving complex problems. "Necessity breeds innovation, General. When you're responsible for keeping people alive in enemy territory, you find ways to make impossible things possible. I developed several encryption methods that were later incorporated into official protocols, though I never received credit for the innovations." The general continued studying her documentation, paying particular attention to the operational timeline. According to Maria's records, Operation Silent Eagle had lasted 17 days, rather than the 11 days mentioned in official files. The extended timeline included a secondary phase that had never been officially acknowledged. "You describe a follow-up operation here," he noted, pointing to entries from the final week. "The official records show the mission ending after the primary objective was completed." "That's correct," Maria confirmed. "After we successfully extracted the intelligence targets, Command ordered us to remain in position for additional surveillance. We discovered that the enemy was planning a major offensive against American positions. The information we gathered during those extra days prevented what could have been a devastating surprise attack." General Mitchell cross-referenced this information with historical records he could access from his secure terminal. Indeed, there had been intelligence warnings in late 1973 about potential enemy operations that had led to successful defensive preparations. The timing matched perfectly with Maria's journal entries, suggesting her team's extended surveillance had provided the crucial early warning. The most significant revelation came when Maria showed him a series of photographs documenting the rescue of a downed American pilot who had been captured 3 days into the mission. According to official records, no American personnel had been captured or rescued during Operation Silent Eagle. Lieutenant Patricia Hayes was shot down during a reconnaissance flight that wasn't supposed to be connected to our operation, Maria explained, pointing to photographs that clearly showed a female pilot being assisted by team members. "We couldn't leave her with the enemy, so Captain Morrison authorized an unauthorized rescue mission." General Mitchell stared at the photographs in amazement. Lieutenant Patricia Hayes had been listed as killed in action during an unrelated flight operation. Her family had been told she died in a helicopter crash with no survivors. The photographs showed her very much alive and being evacuated alongside the primary mission team. "Lieutenant Hayes survived?" he asked, his voice barely concealing his shock. "She did," Maria confirmed. "But her rescue was classified even more deeply than the rest of the operation. Officially acknowledging her survival would have revealed the existence of our mission. She was quietly transferred to a non-combat position and left the military 2 years later." Maria reached into her folder and withdrew a recent letter. "Lieutenant Hayes, now Patricia Hayes Morrison, is still alive. She lives in Oregon and works as a flight instructor. She wrote this letter 3 weeks ago, authorizing me to reveal her story. She's tired of being officially dead when she's very much alive." The general read the letter, which provided contact information and a formal statement from Patricia Hayes Morrison, confirming her participation in Operation Silent Eagle and her gratitude to the team members who risked everything to save her life. The letter also mentioned her willingness to provide official testimony about the mission if requested by current military leadership. "Mrs. Santos, the implications of what you're showing me extend far beyond historical accuracy," General Mitchell said seriously. "If these details are confirmed, several military families have been given incorrect information about their loved ones' service records. Captain Morrison's family, for instance, believes he died in a training accident rather than during a heroic mission." Maria nodded solemnly. "That's exactly why I'm here, General. The people who served in Operation Silent Eagle deserve to have their true service recognized. Their families deserve to know the real story of their sacrifice and heroism." The general stood and walked to the window, processing the magnitude of what he had learned. A mission he thought he understood, had been revealed as far more complex and significant than official records indicated. The involvement of a female communications specialist and the rescue of a supposedly dead pilot represented major gaps in historical documentation. "What are you hoping to accomplish by bringing this information forward now?" he asked, turning back to face Maria. "I want the truth to be preserved in official military records," she replied firmly. "I want Captain Morrison's family to know he died completing a successful mission that saved American lives. I want Sergeant Chen to receive the recognition he deserves for completing the operation after Morrison was killed. And I want Lieutenant Hayes to be officially alive again, instead of carried as killed in action." General Mitchell returned to his seat and looked directly at Maria with profound respect. "Mrs. Santos, what you've brought me today represents one of the most significant historical corrections I've encountered in my career. The question now is how to properly address these discrepancies while respecting ongoing security concerns." Maria leaned forward slightly, her expression showing both hope and determination. "General, I'm 78 years old. I've kept these secrets for 50 years, just as I was ordered to do. But the people involved deserve better than being forgotten or misremembered. I'm not asking for public recognition or media attention. I just want the official records to reflect what really happened." The general stood and walked around the table to face Maria directly. Then, to her complete surprise, he came to attention and rendered a precise military salute. Maria's eyes filled with tears as she recognized the gesture for what it was: formal acknowledgement of her service by the United States military. Maria's eyes, "Mrs. Santos, on behalf of the United States Army, and in recognition of your classified service during Operation Silent Eagle, I want to thank you for your dedication and sacrifice," General Mitchell said formally. "Your courage in bringing this information forward honors the memory of your teammates and serves the cause of historical truth." Maria rose slowly from her chair and returned the salute with practiced precision, her movements showing muscle memory from decades past. For the first time in 50 years, her military service was being officially recognized by someone in uniform. "General," she said, her voice emotional but steady, "I never expected recognition for myself. I just wanted the others to be remembered properly. Mrs. Santos, you're all going to be remembered properly," the general assured her. "I'm going to personally ensure that these records are reviewed at the highest levels. The families of Operation Silent Eagle participants deserve to know the truth about their loved one's service." As their meeting concluded, General Mitchell arranged for Maria to be escorted back to the main hospital area with full honors. Word of the extraordinary meeting had spread quietly through the senior staff, and Maria found herself walking through corridors lined with officers who had learned of her remarkable service. The elderly woman who had been ignored all day was now being treated with the respect due to a decorated veteran whose contributions had been hidden by classification requirements. Her long wait had finally ended, and the truth about Operation Silent Eagle was about to receive the official attention it deserved. 3 weeks later, Maria received a formal invitation to attend a private ceremony at the Pentagon, where corrected service records would be presented to the families of Operation Silent Eagle participants. Lieutenant Patricia Hayes Morrison would attend as well, finally receiving official recognition for her survival and continued service to her country. The mission that had been buried in classified files for 50 years was about to be properly honored, thanks to one elderly woman's determination to ensure that heroes are never forgotten.